Backalley can be quite an intimidating map to navigate the first time you set foot on it, but there are only 3 choke points where the teams can first clash. Well, 3.5. This is less important in a hostage map than a defuse one, since terrorists are free to hide anywhere, but it's worth knowing them just in case. The spawn points for both teams are set out like this. CTs have 2 best spawn points depending on the route they choose through the level. Terrorists have one that's better than all of the others. This one here. It's kind of useful to spawn here when there's just one narrow exit, like in this map and Inferno. Looking at the map's radar image, you can see the points of contact. In just 9 seconds, both teams will meet in this hallway, followed closely by this area here at 10 seconds. Now this is a bit complicated. Although the teams can see each other here, it's an area where the terrorists can choose whether or not to engage. It takes a further 3 seconds for both teams to reach this area, where CTs finally have an equal footing. Also at 13 seconds is this contact point here. The rest of the video discusses these in more depth. Firstly, the tunnel. As I said, it's the first place that teams can meet, and it seems a fairly level playing field, though terrorists will be the first to be able to throw grenades off of this wall and have a spot to hide just here. On the other hand, for backpedaling, the CTs have much wider corridors with more places to hide, while the terrorists are somewhat trapped in narrow indoor areas. A smoke would help the retreat here. Moving across the map, let's go on to the upstairs. This is the most difficult to do by far, as both teams must time some awkward ladder jumps to get a decent time for this route. If you're agile and love bunny hopping, this place could favour you. As CT, I'd suggest smoking the corridor to cover your escape out of the vent, though if you get a good spawn and time, then you should be able to get out just before the terrorists turn the corner. As terrorists, it would be worth learning where the vent is so that you can counter the smoke tactic, or use it to your advantage. I expect some awesome 5-man spray downs decimating the CT side if they decide to rush here. Unlike the first spot, terrorists can easily backpedal to securer locations. And finally, the back alley path. As mentioned previously, it's not entirely fair on CTs since terrorists can choose to engage from a number of windows. CTs have grenades on their side. Immediately targeting the furthest window could be an effective tactic and may delay terrorists who choose to rush the next area I'll talk about. Here you can see just how far CTs can get before terrorists reach the windows. In general, the road is the CT's domain and the indoor place is the terrorists. Terrorists can choose when to engage from the windows, but unlike the CTs who have a lot of room to manoeuvre, as well as a nice sniper spot back near their entrance, it's easy to set up a shot and to wait for terrorists to run into it. Jumping out of the windows as terrorists should spell inescapable death, but if you really want to defenestrate yourselves, I suggest breaking the window with a smoke or flash grenade to at least give you a fighting chance once you hit the ground. Or CT. And finally, Backroom. The CTs may already have encountered terrorists from the windows, but this is the first time they'll properly face them in a balanced position. I suspect that this is the path that favours teamwork the most, as teammates will be able to lob grenades through the windows to either attack terrorists from behind or to smoke the escape routes. Bear in mind that terrorists can do the same back. Backalley is a map that favours individual plays more than most due to its confined corridors making one-on-one engagements more likely. CTs have a remarkably hard time at most of these choke points, and I believe that it's dependent on the luck of the draw where the other team chooses to go and where they're going to be throwing their grenades. Like I said before, rushing doesn't hold as much significance in hostage maps as it does in diffuse, although it still doesn't hurt to know this information. It's worth mentioning the worst spawn positions. I've been asked before why I went to the effort of opening these maps up in the editor to see the spawn points, and now I finally have a reason other than just I didn't know the console command. Interestingly, it also serves as a good reason to learn maths in school. By working out their distance to the entrance, I calculate that the worst terrorist spawn is 189 units further away from the exit, making them 0.76 seconds behind the best spawn, or more if they get blocked, and less if they're speed hacking. I haven't forgotten about you, Quali. CTs have a bit more variance. For the back alley route, there's a difference of 1.38 seconds between these two spawns. The other path isn't quite as diverse. This is the worst spawn point and will put you at a 1 second disadvantage. What sort of difference does that make? Well, not enough for me to justify running through the level with Welshie again to show the differences, but I will adjust these contact points to mirror the timing differences. At Tunnel, this is if both teams get good spawn points. Worst case terrorist spawn looks like this, in which case CTs might be able to lob grenades off the wall before they do. Ignore the terrorist running around the corner, that's still showing the best case spawn for Ts. And finally, worst case CT. Terrorists will be able to reach the mouth of the tunnel before the good guys even turn around the corner. I know what you're thinking, it doesn't make much of a difference. Only about a second. You'll still get caught on both sides if you try to rush through the choke point, so good spawn points here are best used to prepare for the enemies to rush. Moving on to the upstairs area. This does make a difference. If terrorists get a bad spawn, then CTs most certainly will be able to get out of the vent in time. If CTs have a bad spawn, they're going to find it very difficult to escape from the vents. The back alley path adds more variance for CTs due to the spawn positions. If CTs get the worst spawn, then the first terrorists will be able to jump out of the window even before CTs turn the corner, although those in the CT sniper spot will still be able to pick them off. If terrorists get a bad spawn, CTs will be able to further push along the alley or to hide up against the side of this building. With the back room, a bad CT spawn makes a hard fight even worse, and a bad terrorist spawn allows CTs an extra 3/4 of a second to prepare for a fight in the room. In conclusion, even in these worst case scenarios, the difference isn't that great. It's good to know the variance between the best and worst spawn points, but in practice it doesn't make a great difference in most situations, especially since the reality will be somewhere between these two extremes. It's probably easier to visualise this in your mind than it is in these pictures. Thanks to Christis for this idea. Better to have tried it out than never to have known. Have 3 click points. And that's all for this video. If there's anything else about choke points that you think I should include in later videos, then please let me know. Have fun!